Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another Commander video. In this week's episode, what I'm going to be doing is going through Edhrek's list of staples and kind of giving out about the ones I don't actually like. There's a lot of cards in Commander that I don't think need to be run in as many decks as they actually are. There's definitely more synergistic options or cooler ways to interact with your deck that you can run rather than just kind of the most efficient, the most bog standard fare. There's definitely not meant to be any hate here, this is meant to be just a bit of fun. A lot of the cards I'm going to be going over are just ones that people put in any deck without really thinking about how they synergize with what the deck is trying to do. So my plan is to shine a light on that and kind of give reasons for running these cards rather than just auto-including them in every deck. Right, so we've jumped over to Edhrek. Edhrek is one of the best resources for anyone who hasn't heard of it, which could be unlikely seeing as how useful it is when it comes to putting together a Commander deck. And fortunately it has the list of cards that appear in most decks over the last 2 years. So this is what we're going to be going through. I won't be going through every card on this list. I'm going to be cherry picking the ones that I think stand out in terms of cards that don't really deserve to be staples. Shockingly, Sol Ring #1, that's not really surprising anyone. We'll get onto that because we're going to start at the bottom and kind of work our way up, work towards the most played cards. Let's see what we have at the bottom. Right, Thassa's Oracle. Lovely. I don't like Thassa's Oracle in decks that aren't trying to take the most out of it. I can see why Thassa's Oracle is on this list. It is a combo win that can go in any blue deck. Generally, it goes with cards where you're trying to mill your whole library, that kind of thing, and then you play Thassa's Oracle, and then you win by having no cards left in your deck. The question of should it be a staple, though, I am fine with alternate win conditions, and I'm fine with games of Commander ending. But Thassa's Oracle being in the top 200 cards in decks made over the last 2 years, I think is a bit silly. If you're in a deck where you're actively trying to mill out your library, maybe you're in like a graveyard deck, with dredgers, that could be a reasonable place to play it. But if your plan is tutor, demonic consultation, Thassa's Oracle, that's a little bit boring. Again, no hate, you do you if that's how you want to play Magic. But for me, Thassa's Oracle is the kind of card that when playing in Commander, it's something I'll do maybe once or twice and then I'm kind of a bit bored with it, if that makes sense. If you only have 1 or 2 Commander decks, fine. I think Thassa's Oracle is a solid way of winning in a competitive playgroup. But if you're just putting a random Blue X deck together, you don't always need Thassa's Oracle. It's not something I think should be an auto-include, which is kind of what this list is kind of leaning people towards. I don't think Thassa's Oracle is an auto-include in every blue deck. Which, while we're here, bring us on to Lightning Bolt. As I said, I'm not going to be going through every card on this list. It just happens that number 200 and number 199 I think are worth talking about. I can't think of a Commander deck where I've actually ever played Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt is fantastic in one-on-one, it can deal with a lot of creatures, and it can go to the dome. But in a multiplayer format where people start on 40 life, you're not really going to the dome that often. Yes, it is a reasonably priced card, but I think you can do better in Commander. Like, I'd rather be paying 3 mana for one of the cards that deals 3 damage to every creature, something like that. Or specifically in red, a Chaos Warp I think will do way more work than a Lightning Bolt. I can see it have a place in some decks where you're specifically looking for that burn damage. There's the red-white Commander from Dominaria that kind of gives your spells lifelink. In that deck, I could see that, but in 9% of all red decks, I don't think you need Lightning Bolt. This is definitely one that could be cut for something a bit more better, basically. Let's scroll up and see what else takes our fancy. I'm assuming Mole Drifter is here for like Flicker ETB value decks. I don't think you want to run Mole Drifter in just any deck that just wants it for card draw. That's not where Mole Drifter is. It's definitely like an ETB flickery kind of deck. Pact of Negation is an interesting one. I know free counter spells are very good in Commander, and this one, while is currently, according to this, $15 or so, is noticeably cheaper than the card next to it, Force of Negation. I'm not sure how good Pact of Negation is anymore. It being a hard counter is very nice. There's a couple of 1-mana spells that counter a lot of things that you want to be countering in Commander anyway. Normally in Commander, when I'm running counter spells, it's to protect my own things rather than just countering everything that comes down. Because there's 3 players. You can't do counter spells in the same way you do one-on-one. You can't just counter everything your opponents are doing. You have 3 opponents, you only have 1 hand. Like, to me, a card like An Offer You Can't Refuse, I think would see way more play than Pact of Negation. I'm assuming this one we'll see a bit later on. And I know there is equity in kind of the gotcha of Pact of Negation you can cast while all your lands are tapped. But a cheap spell kind of like Swan Song or An Offer You Can't Refuse being only 1 is kind of very similar. Like, leaving open 1 mana is pretty easy, especially when you compare the cost implications of Pact of Negation. This is apparently $15, where An Offer You Can't Refuse can't be more than a couple of quid. But the main reason I'm flagging this is when I think of blue decks, I don't think Pact of Negation as an auto-include. Let's keep going up and see what we've got. This is an interesting one. Niv Mizzet Perun is in theory played in 9% of all decks that it can be run in. that seems really high for me. It's a very, very strong card. But to me, I don't think you can run Niv Mizzet Parun in any deck that isn't Izzet. Like, you can't run it in, like, a Teamer deck. I don't think you can physically cast this in most decks running more than 2 colors. This is more an interesting aside. Like in Izzet decks, I think it'll be very good, in especially like Izzet spells-based decks, which is a lot of what Izzet kind of does. But yeah, interesting to see it on this top 200 list. What else do we have that stands out? Actually, I'm glad to see Malachi Rebirth on this list. This is actually one I highly agree should be here. I actually would call this a staple. Because it's also a land, it does come into play tapped, which is a downside. I would actually run this in any deck running black, if I'm honest with you. I'm really high on Malachi Rebirth. It's just a free bit of protection for your commander. And if your commander has any kind of cool ETB effects, you get that as well. They won't see it coming. And early game, it can just be a land. That is just still really good. Let's see what else we have. Arbor Elf on the list. Fine with Arbor Elf being a staple, but I would put this as like the worst of the Dorks, as it only untaps a forest. Also, Opt at the end. I do like cantrips, but it's still a card in your deck. I'm assuming something like Consider must be higher up on the list, because I do rate that higher, obviously. I like putting things in the graveyard. We all do. But otherwise, solid card. Let's see what else we have. I'm a little surprised to see any kind of green mana rock on the list. In green, you have access to all the rampant growth effects. Like the budget ones, you have some of the more expensive ones as well, kind of like 3 visits. I don't know if you actually need this. There is definitely an argument for diversifying your ramp. So if you can, not running it all on the same thing, so not running all mana dorks, not running all mana rocks, not running it all on lands, because it means if one gets blown up, you still have access to something, all your hard work isn't undone. But lands is normally the safest, just because of the social contract that comes with blowing up everyone's lands. And you can kind of see, like the card next to it destroys an artifact. There's so many of those effects in Commander, just like tacked on to creatures, that I'm surprised to see a green talisman this highly. I personally, this is just me, I would not run a talisman or a signet that taps for green in any green X deck. I would rather have a rampant growth or one of those effects instead. And yeah, we see it up here as well, talisman of resistance for Golgari as well. Next to it is an interesting card, Notion Thief. This is a very, very strong card. Would I call it an auto-include? I'm not 100%, unless, like, this will definitely be skewed in terms of popularity of decks. That is definitely a thing to reconsider with this list. But, like, for me, this is kind of a key card in, like, a wheel deck, something like that. Oh, actually, no, this is Netkazar, isn't it? This is because Netkazar is a popular commander. I would guess this is here. I think Notion Thief is a very, very strong card, but it being in 11% of all decks that it can be run in is very high. I'm partially assuming this has got higher because of Hull Breacher being banned. I'm assuming people realised how strong Hull Breacher was and then thought, what's the next best equivalent? We have Notion Thief. Nice and cheap, we do like that. If you want that kind of hate, like if you are in a competitive playgroup, I could see Notion Thief being solid. But if you're not doing wheels and you're not in that kind of competitive playgroup where everyone's drawing a ton of cards, Notion Thief does not scream auto-include to me in every Dimir deck. Let's see what else we have. I do like Atali. It is a big, dumb, stupid creature made for Commander. We like playing things off the top of people's libraries. I'm fine with that being on there. I quite like that card. Good. Okay, yeah. Here's an offer you can't refuse. I really like this card. It's going up in price a little bit. It was an uncommon. Personally, I don't really like giving like financial advice, but as this is an uncommon from a recent set, I have found this card to be very, very good. It is a card I could see just getting reprinted in some Commander decks just because it is very efficient and it is very good. I'm personally fine with the counter-target non-creature spell part of the card. That's generally the things that you want to be countering in Commander anyway. Yes, there will be times your opponent hard casts the Crater Hoof and kills you with it, but a lot of the times they're going to be kind of natural ordering it or cheating it into play with a spell, something like that. But the main use for something like this is to protect your commanders or some of your creatures from targeted removal, or also just generally stopping the board wipe when you're in a profitable situation. That is where a spell like An Offer You Can't Refuse really, really shines. And with just a single blue mana, I think is really, really solid. We have a lot of good cards on this line, like Skyshroud Claim, again, getting 2 forests out of the deck, non-basic forests they can be. They can be jewels, something like that. I really like this, especially with like the snow-covered jewels or the ones from Dominaria. Fantastic in kind of budget-style builds. Moving up, good to see a lot of these cards. Alright, I've already given out about 1 free counter spell. Time for me to give out on another one. People need to remember that Force of Will is a bad magic card. It is run because it is a necessity to run it. It is not run because it is a good card. Like, it is like exiling a blue card out of your hand is card disadvantage. You are 2 for 1ing yourself with this card. I will agree it is better than Pact of Negation because it doesn't muck your next turn up as well. I'm also definitely going to be harsher on cards that are more expensive, like $80. That is a sizable amount. I don't want players getting into the format thinking, I need Force of Will to make my blue deck good. An offer you can't refuse is right here. It is a fraction of the price, and 90% of the times will do exactly the same job as this Force of Will. For me, Force of Will is definitely a card that, if you have it, cool, play it in Commander. If you don't worry about it. It's nowhere near the end of the world. Right, move on up, let's see what else we have. Okay, Propaganda's a good one to talk about. I don't think this goes in as many decks as people run it in. Is that 13,000 or is that 130,000? Wow, there's a lot of decks on here. I think that's 130,000. That is a lot of decks. For me, Propaganda has a place in some, but it's not just an auto-include in any deck running blue. It has a place for me in like enchantment decks where you kind of want to run a number of enchantments. There's definitely kind of like the pillow fort style of thing where you run multiples of these sound effects to protect yourself and then kind of win with a combo. I think a lot of people like running it because it's like a good control card. But it's a control card that I think personally just slows down the game of Commander a bit too much. You could definitely run more proactive cards in its slot. Like Propaganda is a fine card. It will do work. It will protect you from like the aggro player or from like the token player. But it's another card that kind of I don't think like, oh, I'm playing blue, therefore I must run Propaganda. So I'm a little bit surprised to see it this highly on the list. We're probably about the 100, 125 mark in terms of most played cards. Let's see what else we have. Here we go. So we have another expensive card in Mana Crypt. Mana Crypt is a really tricky one because it is a very, very powerful card. And if this was the same price as Sol Ring, it would probably be second or maybe even above Sol Ring in terms of decks it should go into. But actually, I might stick a pin in Mana Crypt and we'll get back to it when we get to Sol Ring itself. Let's see what else we have. Okay, this is an interesting one. Phyrexian Arena. I like Phyrexian Arena. I think it's good. I'm also glad that it's now come down in price with its most recent reprint into a standard set. Although, I did have a conversation with a friend recently who said Phyrexian Arena was bad in Commander. And if I'm honest, his points did make a lot of sense, and it has kind of started getting me to reevaluate the spot Phyrexian Arena has in decks. So the argument he made is that if you compare this to something like the instant or sorcery speed card draw that Black has, like you read the bones, that kind of thing, that spending 2 to 3 mana to get the cards straight away is better than waiting a whole turn cycle to draw one card, and then you have to wait a whole nother turn cycle to draw another card. And then the best case scenario with Phyrexian Arena is that you play it on turn, I guess 2 would be ideal, but most likely on turn 3, and then it draws you like 4 to 6 cards over the course of a game, like on the average length of a Commander game. But if you draw this late and you have a load of mana, you just want some card draw straight away, it's coming down and all your opponents get to do something before you draw one extra card. Like when you compare that to a Read the Bones draws you the 2 cards on turn 3, and then late game when you have more mana, it'll draw you the cards and you can use the cards straight away. I do think that is a very interesting argument with this card, and it is making me reevaluate how much I put Phyrexian Arena into decks. I am definitely running more instant sorcery, like black card draw, and I'm finding myself putting in Phyrexian Arena less, so maybe that kind of argument has kind of worked on me. The fact that Phyrexian Arena is probably about the same price as Deadly Dispute now shows kind of where the cards are in power level. Like, Commander's getting quicker, I think Phyrexian Arena might be starting to show its age. It is a card I could see myself playing less and less in the next couple of years. Which is a shame, I do like it, but let's crack on. What else do we have? Surprised Skullclamp isn't higher. This goes in so many creature-based decks. I think it actually goes in kind of like any creature-based deck, if I'm honest with you. Like, maybe the price is a reason it's not that higher. This is probably about the 100 mark or so. A card like Pongify as well, I'm surprised is this low. I'm assuming that is also, again, because of the price. Like, a $5 is a bit pricey for a removal spell like this. But I would personally run Pongify in any blue deck that's not running white or black for that kind of other removal. But yeah, I love Pongify. I think it's a great card. It scales so well in Commander. Just destroy a creature, they get a 3/3. Cool. You've definitely killed something bigger than a 3/3 with the Pongify. Let's see what else we have. Like, Deathrite Shaman is an interesting one. This is a card that definitely gets better the more competitive your playgroup is. Like, for me, the base level of this card is like a mana dork, and you want to be like gobbling up other people's fetch lands, ideally. If you're in a playgroup where you don't see as many fetch lands, then Deathrite Shaman is nowhere near as high for me, if I'm honest. The rest of the Graveyard Hate is nice, but it is more incidental. Like, this goes into a deck as a mana dork, and then the other things are kind of useful. There's other ways of nerfing people's graveyards in Commander, and especially in Golgari, just like run a Bojuka Bog, that kind of thing. That does the job as well. Let's see what else we have. Another expensive card to give out about, Mana Drain. This is an extremely powerful card. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But again, blue decks can leave home without it. I think it's best in kind of big mana blue decks where you can actually make the most out of this. So in like maybe like a blue-based artifact deck where you can use the mana to cast your Wormcoil Engine or your Blightsteel Colossus, that kind of thing. I did actually run this in a Joyride deck that was running a lot of Titans. It was quite good there. But it is Commander. You're probably going to have some expensive spells in your hand. It is a good card. Again, the price is the biggest thing here. Kind of like Mana Crypt, it would be higher if it didn't have the $40-odd tax attached to it. Hopefully they reprint this into Oblivion and make it like 15, 20 quid. I would be fine with that. But let's see what else we have. I think Sylvan Library is probably an interesting one to talk about. This again is a very strong card, but I don't think it's an auto-include in any green decks anymore. Green has access to so many other card draw spells now, like that it didn't used to have before. Something like Return the Wild Speaker, I think is fantastic. This draws you a ton of cards immediately. We really like that. The thing with Sylvan Library as well is that if you're not in a super tuned deck and you can't like control what's on the top of your library. So basically, if you don't have fetch lands to shuffle the top of your library away, you could just be continually looking at cards you don't want on top, paying 8 life every turn. That will add up. I know you're in Command and you start on 40 life, but churning through your deck with Sylvan Library will add up to a lot of life loss over the course of a game. So if you have shuffle effects, this does get better, but this is not an auto-include in more kind of budget builds. Once you've powered up your deck, you've got kind of like the consistency of fetch lands, that kind of thing. Then Sylvan Library comes in for me and then does get a bit better. But as an auto-include in every green deck, I don't think it's there. Like, I think Return of the Wild Speaker has more of a place in 2023 Magic than Sylvan Library does for the vast majority of green Commander decks. But let's see what else we have. Let's see what else we can give out about. Okay. Feed the Swarm. I highly agree. Like, I personally think it should be in every black deck that's not running green. Green can answer enchantments. Black really struggles at it. Feed the Swarm is a fantastic way to do it. I really like this card. I'm playing it more and more as time goes on. Let's see what else we have. Ooh, Mystic Remora. Mystic Remora is a good card. I'm glad it got reprinted and shrunk this price down to just apparently $6 now. That is much better than it used to be. We do like that. I think it's a fine spell. It will definitely draw you a bunch of cards over the course of a game. The cumulative upkeep will add up. That's kind of the point of it. And it's meant that I've kind of played it only in decks where you can kind of get it back again and again, maybe an enchantment-based deck. The best use I had out of it was in like a Muldrotha deck where you can let it go to the graveyard, then you can cast it again. That was really cool. But as a card to run in every blue deck, I think you don't need it, if I'm honest with you. It's a good card if you have it. It's now cheaper, so pick it up if you want it. But again, like top 100 staples in blue, that's tricky. There's so many other good cards. All right, this is a good one to talk about. Dockside Extortionist. I say it's a good card to talk about, but I have never played with this card and I have never played against this. I don't own one, and I don't think anyone in my play group owns one either. But I know from all the discourse, and also I can read the card. I know how good it is. But even as someone with a fairly like hefty Commander collection, I've never thought of Dockside Extortionist is a card I need for every red deck. Like, not at this price. There's other things you can do. Like, actually, probably the best comparison, now I'm thinking about it, again, someone more intelligent has probably already made this take, but it's kind of like the red mana drain, just in terms of like it makes you so much mana in one go. Like people play a lot of artifacts and a lot of enchantments in Commander, and obviously the game is multiplayer. This is going to make you so much mana. It is a very, very good card. If it was a tenner or 15 quid, I'd probably pick one up, but $70 is obscene. Like, I can't be bothered with that. That seems way too pricey. As we start going up as well, we're starting to see less green talismans and signets and stuff. Obviously, we had Simic Signet here, but we're starting to see less and less of them. That makes sense. Like, I don't think you need to run them anywhere near as much. Teferi's Protection is another interesting one. There is an argument that this could go in any white deck. It is super, super strong. Like, this is almost a win condition, if I'm honest with you. I've seen so many games ended by someone trying to board wipe or someone trying to do something stupid, and just the person Teferi's Protection pieces out of the game, then they come back in and they're just in a much stronger position than everyone else, because you are generally casting it after a board wipe or something like that. I agree with this one being on the list. Wish it was cheaper, give it a few more reprints, but I would agree with this being here. I think it's very, very good. Let's see what else we have. We have all the Mana Dorks on the list, actually. I've just noticed. I think literally every green Mana Dork we've seen. Okay, here's two that I think should be a little higher. Nature's Law and 3 Visits. These are the premium Rampant Growth effects. I think you should be running these over Rampant Growth. Yes, I know this one's just been reprinted, so it's a little bit more cost effective. It's like less than 2 quid. I didn't realize this had shot up to almost 9 quid now. We don't like that. I kind of hope Wizards stick this in every green precon going forward over Rampant Growth. It's not too much to ask, but just the fact, as we said with Skyshroud Claim, that these go and get non-basic lands out of your deck. As long as it has the forest subtype, you can go and get it out of your deck. It gets triomes. We love all that. I wish these were cheaper. Like, make this 50p, make this 2-3 quid, and we'll be great. Like, I think they are fantastic, and it makes sense why they're so high. Right, I'm glad these are next to each other. Right, we have Rustic Study and Smothering Tithe. I hate these cards. I really can't be bothered with them. I know they are good. I know Rustic Study will draw you lots of cards. I know Smothering Tithe will make you lots of mana. but they're just kind of unfun. You're just constantly like, do you pay the 1? Do you pay the 2? It kind of gets really annoying, and you paint a target on your back so quickly because you're the one constantly in your opponent's face being like, do you do the thing? Do you do the thing? Let me do the thing. Like, if I'm honest, Rustic Study should just read that all your opponent's spells cost 1 more. They should not be giving you the cards at any point. Smothering Tithe is definitely trickier because the 2 is a real tax. Like, people don't pay for Smothering Tithe, and that makes it super annoying. Like, I know both these cards are very good, but I don't put these in every commander deck. I do not put Rustic Study in every deck running blue, and I definitely don't put Smothering Tithe in every deck running white. I will put Rustic Study in a deck that cares about card draw. Maybe if I have like a Psychosis Crawler that's like weaponizing the card draw, then it will go in. Similarly with Smothering Tithe, if I'm playing like an artifact deck that's kind of caring about artifacts and stuff, then I will play Smothering Tithe because it has a place there beyond just being good. Like, they both are just generically powerful cards, which is why they're on this staples list. I do get that, but for me, I don't run them anymore. I can't be bothered with them, if I'm honest. Similarly to like Demonic Tutor, now I can see this over here. In general, I've stopped running tutors in decks. I personally find it makes decks less fun. I would rather have a good bit of card draw than a Demonic Tutor. And obviously, in more competitive playgroups, you will know if in your playgroup you need to tutor up your win condition, or you need to tutor up your removal more often. But generally, I think Commander would be more fun if just across the board, people tutored less and just played more good bits of card draw. It makes games more fun. It gives you more interesting decisions rather than just, okay, I'm going to go get this combo piece or this best thing right now. But that's just me. I know that take might not be for everyone, which is fine. Okay, this is going to be my most hated card on the list. I hate Cyclonic Rift. I think it's one of the most annoying cards in all of Commander, and I would agree a large majority of players agree with me on that. It is a very, very strong card. We all know it. We've all been rifted. We know how good this card actually is. My main issue with it, though, is that it's never used how I think it is best. Cyclonic Rift is not a board wipe. It is a win condition. In the same way as Land Destruction, I am fine with it if the game ends then and there. My main issue with Cyclonic Rift is that the vast majority of my experiences playing against Cyclonic Rift isn't someone Cyclonic Rifts and then wins the game in the next turn or two. They basically play Cyclonic Rift and then the game takes an extra half hour, 45 minutes. It is one of the most annoying things in all of Magic, because basically people just end up exactly in the same position they were, but maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes later. Also, when did it get this bloody expensive? Do yourself and your playgroup a favour. Do not think that if you're starting out in Commander that you need to run Cyclonic Rift. It is an annoying card that just annoys people rather than does anything cool. Going up now. We're getting to the top. Okay, so before we get on to number 1, let's talk about Cultivate and Kadama's Reach. I know why these are on the list. They are cheap, they are very good at ramping you and also fixing you. But nowadays, I don't run these in decks where I don't care about the landfall. In a landfall deck, yes, these trigger landfall and then give you the land in your hand to then play the next turn to trigger landfall again. Or if you're in a deck with Azusa, it lets you put the lands in straight away. That is very good. Also in like 4 or 5 color decks, getting multiple basics, these make those kind of decks happen. But I've already gone on about in this video, and I will keep drumming on about it, how cards like Farseek and Nature's Law and 3 Visits are just, I would play them over. They cost a mana less, they get you your non-basic lands, and again, they don't have to be expensive non-basic lands. It will just fix you better in the long run. If 3 Visits wasn't 9 quid, I think this argument would be a little bit easier for me to make. But I think it's definitely a world in the next couple of years where these kind of get pushed out, and these will get lesser and lesser, if I'm honest, just because they're not as efficient. Like, curves have definitely got lower in Commander over the last couple of years, and these being on 3, where Rampant Growth, Farseek, and the other ones being on 2 will make a big difference. Which I guess brings us on to the top 2 now. So Arcane Signet, I'm fine with that being up here. I think it's a good card. It just fixing you for all your colours for 2 mana. I'm fine with that. It's okay. It does ramp and it fixes you, and is now nice and cheap. We love that. But it brings us on to number 1, Sol Ring. There is definitely an argument that Sol Ring and Mana Crypt should go in like 90% of decks. There's definitely some kind of like land-based decks where you don't really need Sol Ring. You can get there through your land ramp. You don't want your ramp to be on artifacts where it could get blown up. Completely understand that. And I think we've definitely gone past the point now where you can ban either of them. Like, there was definitely a point a couple of years ago where you could have got away with banning both of these, but I think just the feel bads for people who have worked towards and got their Mana Crypts would now be definitely too much. And the fact that every Commander deck comes with a Sol Ring means that it is like the card of the format. It's probably the card that people think about most when they think about Commander. It is Sol Ring. Doesn't mean I like Sol Ring. Similarly to like Rustic Study and Smothering Tithe, no one really likes seeing it early in the game. Like we've all been in games where some bugger has gone, turn 1 Soul Ring into Arcane Signet, or turn 1 Soul Ring into Is It Signet, or something like that. That is obviously very good for them. And I'm pretty sure I remember hearing on the Command Zone years ago that it doesn't actually affect your win rate going turn 1 Soul Ring. But it does definitely feel like you should be winning if you go turn 1 Soul Ring into another bit of ramp. That is very, very strong. Maybe this is man in 30s shouts at Cloud, but I personally think I would enjoy games of Commander more if there was no Soul Ring or if there was no Mana Crypt. Again, as I've said, we're too past the point where they can be banned now. That's just never happening, and I don't actually think it should happen. Personally, maybe this is just the brewer in me. I would prefer finding a cool synergistic card to run in a deck rather than an auto-include such as Soul Ring. Alright, I think I'm going to end it there. Obviously, there are 200 cards on this list I could have spoken about. If I didn't speak about them, it's probably because I think they deserve to be there. Something like Beast Within. Yeah, Counterspell. We love that. Path to Exile. I see all these cards. These all make sense. But yeah, the aim of this was to kind of give my thoughts on some cards that I don't think need to be in as many decks as they are. I hate you, Cyclonic Rift. I hate you. That doesn't mean if you like them, you shouldn't run them. If you own these cards and you like them, by all means, go and rift your friends. Play your Rustic Study, make them pay the 1. Play your Smothering Tithe, make them pay the 2. Make all that treasure. If that's what you like doing, go do it. Awesome. I am not going to tell you how to live your best life. I just hope it makes some players realise that you don't need to go and spend a large amount of money on these cards when there are other options out there, when there are cooler things or more synergistic things that you could be doing with your time playing Commander. But anyway, please like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.